Hi, everyone. My name is Cyndy McDonald, and I'm an instructor for the UCLA College Counseling Certificate Program through the UCLA Extension. It has been my honor and privilege to be an instructor in this program for many years. And one of the things I love doing is bringing voices of people who have um, are experts in our area and have been through the program so that you can learn not only from us instructors, but also from your fellow colleagues. And so I'm very honored today to have one of my students who has also done the practicums, and we're going to talk about the UCLA College Counseling Certificate practicum. So welcome, Allison. I'm glad to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, what your experience has been, kind of where you're at and where you came from and where you're at right now.
Sure. My name is Allyson Tobias, and I am located in the Bay Area in Northern California. And my journey actually started as a middle school teacher. So I was a teacher for a long time. And then I'm from the East Coast and I moved out here and I had little kids and I stayed at home for a little bit. And then I actually did consulting with the College Board, focusing on math curriculum development. And then during the pandemic, I actually started working directly with students again, doing some homeschooling. And I have a twin sister who is a college counselor who also went through the UCLA counseling program. And she has been a college counselor for about 10 years now. And she said to me, do you think you want to continue in the math side of things, or would you consider becoming a college counselor? And that sounded intriguing to me. So right away, I signed up for the UCLA Extension program. And I kind of started one course at a time and then raced through because I found it so energizing. And I did the whole program in about a year and a half. And I actually got my certificate last year, December 2023. And what I've been doing since then is kind of a slow launch as my own independent educational consultant. So I spent a lot of January through June actually doing a lot of parent education and parent workshops just locally in my backyard with my community. And I am now working with a handful of students independently. And one of my niche areas right now is working with students of neurodiverse backgrounds and students who aren't sure of what they're going to do and exploring alternative pathways. And gap year in that pathway is one of my little passion areas.
It certainly is. And you're the one that introduced me to Julia Rogers, who I've had do an interview and do a Friday forum as well. So that sounds like an exciting journey and taking all that background experience and bringing it to this point now where you're able to use all of that to impact the students and the families that you work with.
Yes. And I should mention that my children now are both in high school. So I have a freshman in high school and I have a senior in high school.
Mhm.
So my senior in high school and I are currently exploring gap year options for him.
Oh, nice. Oh, nice. So when you're doing the UCLA program, the last class or one of the last classes, one of the linchpin parts of the program is doing a practicum. So you and I were chatting, you told me about your practicum. So what I want to know is what are the top three things that you recommend for somebody that's looking at doing their practicums?
Sure, I'd love to share that. And I was in class, I had like two classes left when it was summer 2023. And during that class, when I was in that class with you start to feel that feeling of, uh-oh, what is my practicum going to be? How do I figure it out? How do I know what to do? And so some of my advice is a little bit of looking back, what I wish I had access to, and also how I figured it out. So I think the top three things, number one is I would really encourage people to think about what it is you're hoping to do after you're
Mhm.
finished with the program and what season you would like to do your practicum. So some people feel like I just need to go to the next quarter because that's what's happening. I actually lined things up because I really wanted to do my practicum in the fall because I wanted to experience the college application season with seniors. I know other students who have done theirs in the spring and they worked with juniors on the college exploration research side of things. So I think thinking about the season is super helpful. And also, am I hoping to be an independent education consultant? You know, what is the rest of my time going to be during that period of time is also important. So I think that number one is thinking about the season timing and what you want. I know that there are, what I've heard and experienced is that there are people who would like to become independent education counselors, IECs, and they're not sure how to go about getting a practicum with an IEC, or they want to have it in a school, and how does that work? So I actually had my practicum with an IEC, which felt like a very special experience. I was lucky and grateful that I had a sister with whom I could work and do that internship. And I actually spent some time, she's in Vermont and I'm in California. So I spent some time in Vermont with her working in person, as well as then working virtually with students. So my second piece of advice is keep in mind that the practicum course is a course as well as a practicum experience. So I was so eager to do my practicum that I did my last class the same time I did the practicum class, the same time I did my practicum. And I'm very grateful that I wasn't committed to work, you know, full-time paying work outside of it, because that probably took me like 20 hours a week between the two courses and the practicum. And I think it's important to factor that in. There was a lot of reading to do, there were materials to create, and it was great, wonderful stuff to do, but I wasn't quite prepared for the fact that that was going to be factored into my time.
It's not just the practicum itself. There's the course,
Exactly.
the curriculum that goes with it.
There's coursework, and I created some great handouts and materials that I plan to use in my work. But it's important to add in that time.
Yeah.
In that same vein, when it comes to time, it's also helpful to know, especially if you're, I said, I guess any setting, but especially if you're trying to approach an independent education, if you're trying to approach an IEC and say, hey, I want to work with you, you don't have to think of it as 65 hours of their time, right? It's 65 hours of your time. And you can be, some folks are working with some students on their own independently and saying, give me support on that. But it was also helpful for me to know that up to 30 hours of the time could be spent going to conferences and reporting on those things. So at least 35 hours has to be with your practicum site. But because I was doing mine in the fall, I had access to some amazing conferences, and I went to the UC Counselors Conference. I went to the CSU Counselors Conference. I actually did a 2-day Gap Year Counselors Institute. And we share those experiences during our practicum through our journal entries. And I found that it was helpful, one, for me to go to those, for me to write up notes that I wouldn't have taken quite as carefully, and then to share those with everybody in my practicum class and then have some engagement around that conversation. So in terms of time spent, I feel like that's a helpful piece to know. And lastly, you and I have talked about this before, is how to go out finding a supervisor. You, if you don't already have access, will likely have access to UCLA classes, Facebook alumni groups. And I actually think it's super helpful to utilize those groups, just sending out a message saying, hey, I'm about to do my practicum. Does anybody have an advice? Would anybody be willing to take me on as a mentor or an advisor? I think that's a really good resource to tap to help find a practicum supervisor. And fellow students as well. I actually, last fall, I was the practicum supervisor for someone in one of my classes who had approached me and said, you know, I'm working with some students on my own. I'm not quite sure how I can be my own supervisor. And we actually worked out a situation where I was her mentor, and it was wonderful. And it was not too time consuming on my part. And it helped me actually think about what is that like in terms of trying to work with an IEC as a student. And I've done it on both ends. And it's great to try to approach someone and say, it's not going to be a ton of your time, and I'm not looking to take your business.
Right. Well, and then also demonstrate it doesn't have to be somebody who has years and years and years of experience, that you can have a beneficial practicum experience with just someone else. So,
yes.
And I think that's very valuable to know.
And one of the things that, you know, we don't learn in the course that was super valuable in my practicum work was how does the Common App work, right? So to actually be in things like doing Common App tutorials that we're practicing, adding someone as a supervisor, that like going through that experience isn't part of the program. So if someone's like, I'm going to go to the program and then I'm going to jump into doing my own, and they haven't had that side of things, it's a super valuable piece. And as a new person who had just gone through that, I was actually able to help with that, even though I hadn't worked with a ton of students.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I think I would also reiterate what you said as your number one. It's really important when people are looking at doing their practicums of what season you want to do it. What do you want to get out of the practicum? And and sometimes students know what they want to do. They want to work in a school or CBO, or they're going to go, work in the military or be an IEC, and that's fine. Sometimes they don't know, but what do you want to get out of it? Do you want to help students, as you said, in the fall with their applications? Do you want to see how you help them build a list and build their activity list, things like that? So that's a really important thing. And you can start looking that up ahead of time. So, and building that before you get to the practicum.
Right. And there might be someone who's like, there might be someone who's like, I really want to help with essay building and essay support. Like I know that people have found practicums where that's literally that's virtually all they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you very much, Allyson. This was very helpful.
You're welcome.
Congratulations on you getting your certificate. And someday I'm going to see you applying to be a CEP. Okay.
All in due time.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let me find there we go.